Thank you, Mr. Moussa, the distinguished representative from Djibouti, for those powerful words. And now we'll begin the panel portion of this event, where you will hear perspectives from foreign policy and legal experts. We have a great panel, so I'm really looking forward to hearing what all of you have to say. So our first panelist, David Mulroney, has spent the majority of his 30-plus years in the Canadian Foreign Service focused on Asia. He was Canada's ambassador to the People's Republic of China from 2009 to 2012. Mr. Mulroney's other assignments included serving as the Associate Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and as the Prime Minister's personal representative to the G8 summit. He has also served as Foreign and Defense Policy Advisor to the Prime Minister. Mr. Mulroney has been married to his wife, Janet, for 47 years. They have 3 grown children and 1 delightful granddaughter. He was made a Knight Commander of the Order of St. Gregory the Great by Pope Francis in 2019. David Mulroney, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I was very grateful for the opportunity to come and join you today to talk about the close and essential relationship between respect for life and human dignity and respect for sovereignty in multilateral diplomacy. Let me first express my gratitude to the missions of Burundi and Djibouti for sponsoring this event, and organizers CFAM and Campaign Life Coalition for enabling me to be here. When I started working on these remarks, I assumed they'd mainly be drawing on my experience in Canadian government and foreign service. But as I tried to marshal my thoughts, they kept straying from my public service career and into my professional afterlife, namely my time as the president of the University of St. Michael's College, the Catholic university within the University of Toronto. As I reflected, I invariably began thinking about 2 distinguished people who were associated not with Canadian diplomacy, at least not directly, but with the intellectual life of St. Michael's. The first person who came to mind is the great French philosopher Jacques Maritain, who lectured at St. Michael's in the 1930s and who would go on to inspire the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Maritain, a Christian humanist, was able to encourage consensus among the drafters of the Universal Declaration in recognizing that human rights are endowed universally, and indeed he would argue they are essential to our becoming who we were created to be. Belief in the sanctity and dignity of every human life was central to Maritain's thinking about the purpose, scope, and authority of the Universal Declaration. Indeed, this understanding of who and what we are underpins the document's claim to apply universally. Another famous name that associated with St. Michael's is that of Marshall McLuhan, the brilliant pioneer of media theory. He's someone I used to see crossing the campus on his way to daily mass back when I was an undergraduate 50 years ago. Today, he's best remembered for the observation that the medium is the message, the insight that how we communicate shapes perception and understanding as much as, and possibly more than, what we communicate. I've often thought that McLuhan's observation has special relevance for diplomats. Diplomacy that seeks to foster trust, respect, and mutual understanding is enabled when diplomats communicate attentively, patiently, and respectfully. The medium is the message. That sounds obvious, doesn't it? A matter of common sense. But over the last decade, some so-called progressive states and agencies seem to have forgotten how to listen. This has had negative consequences in terms of diplomacy, in terms of the nature and quality of international assistance, and in terms of respect for the sovereignty of member states, as this is outlined in the UN Charter. Let me briefly recap the Canadian version of an increasingly common cautionary tale. A decade ago, the government of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced, without much evidence of prior thought, consultation, or research, that Canada would henceforth offer something termed feminist international assistance. It was made clear that the objective of the policy was to change, meaning to undermine and replace, laws, traditions, and cultures in countries considered less progressive. Canada's major international assistance vehicle, known as the Muskoka Initiative on Maternal, Newborn, and Child Health, a very successful initiative that had been carefully consulted with partners in Canada and internationally, including much detailed planning with our recipient state partners in the field, was abruptly replaced by one that mainly involves Canada writing checks to its new partners, the big international abortion providers in the US and the UK. Gone was a program that, according to the Muskoka Initiative Consortium, had provided life-saving care to 700,000 women before, during, and after childbirth, that trained more than 70,000 health professionals in recipient countries, and that provided essential vaccines to more than 400,000 children. The new initiative quickly transitioned from focusing on maternal, newborn, and child health to a greater emphasis on what is euphemistically termed sexual and reproductive health, enabling the strange and sad decoupling of babies, that most vulnerable of populations, from mothers, via the elevation of abortion to the status of health care. The anti-life impulse driving this is palpable and deeply disturbing. Through its extensive funding for abortion and contraception, Canada's Feminist International Assistance serves as an instrument of social change, a lever to upend traditional reverence for children and ultimately for the family itself. This is disastrous diplomacy. It's hard not to believe that it fails to honor the commitment to respect the sovereign equality of all members and not to, as has already been mentioned today, intervene in matters which are essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of any state, as outlined in the Charter. The chosen medium, one-way megaphone diplomacy, perfectly captures the essence of the message. We're not interested in your traditions, your values, or your ideas. We know what's best. Not only is this arrogant and offensive, it robs Canada of the opportunity to craft a policy informed by actual local needs, local experience, and local expertise, things that contributed to the success of the Muskoka Initiative. We were and are flying blind. It would be encouraging to think that Canadians, as well as people in other like-minded states and institutions, will at some point wake up to this diplomatic disaster. But we have yet to see much evidence of this. That's mainly because the media in most such countries, Canada included, are largely in lockstep with progressive foreign ministries and have chosen not to notice. Fortunately, not everyone is asleep. Courageous Nigerian author and activist Obianuju Ekeocha has forcefully described what's happening as ideological neo-colonialism, the very antithesis of respecting the sovereignty of other states. It's hard not to understand the power of such coercive diplomacy. It can be very difficult for local officials to push back against wealthy countries and powerful international agencies, to say no to the billions of dollars now being spent to bring to recipient countries the kind of social chaos, confusion, and division that now plagues so many countries in the West. Let me assure you that Canadians are themselves still willing to listen. Authentic and courageous voices, like Obianuju's, have the kind of credibility that can prompt thoughtful people in Canada and elsewhere to pause and reflect, to open their eyes and ears to the fact that tax dollars that not so long ago supported mothers and babies are now delivering death. We need to do more to ensure that such authentic local voices are heard. I salute the work that Campaign Life Coalition, CFAM, and other members of civil society are doing to make this happen. Building public awareness is essential if we are to persuade policymakers and diplomats from Canada and elsewhere to execute a long overdue course correction. It's time for them to renew their commitment to respect the sovereignty of member states as laid out in the UN Charter. Acknowledging this is essential if we are to continue to benefit from broad, inclusive, and effective multilateralism. Multilateral diplomacy must also reaffirm the primacy of the right to life, as outlined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, acknowledging that this reflects an understanding of who we are that transcends borders and boundaries and enables us to assert the document's universal applicability. Policies, programs, and official communications should reflect this. Above all, we need to ensure that foreign ministries understand the extent to which coercive diplomacy corrupts the profession, its practitioners, and its outcomes. It's time for diplomats to drop their megaphones and start listening again. Thank you.